Well, here we go. Finally got this out of there. This is the firing pin that was broken to begin with, and then this is the remnants of the screw that holds the pin that holds the firing pin in. It was down in there, and you can see where I've had to drill that out. That thing was absolutely fused in there, and so what I will do is I'll go in there and I'll repair those threads. I'll clean that up really nicely, and we'll be putting in another pin. It'll be slightly oversized threads on the pin, and get it all back together. Here on the LaFever, I've drilled this out, and now I'm tapping it. Gonna put a different stud in there. Wanted to cover up the camera lens there while I did that. There we go. Down in here it has, like what I've been showing you, where I had to drill out for that pin. The original, the screw that went down in there, instead of being just the regular screw all the way to the end, it had this attached to the end of the screw. So basically you had your threaded area, and then it had kind of a nipple, an end. And what that did was, this is the firing pin here. See that notch? It came up and kept the firing pin from coming back out. So what I'm going to do is take this scrub screw and this hardened pin, and I'm going to weld them together and make them work. Now, in order to do that, I have recessed the end of this scrub screw some. And in order to hold it and to do that, I've taken this aluminum, I put a through hole in it, and I tapped it. I don't know if we'll be able to see here. Let's see here. Maybe you can see. Let me find a light. maybe you all will be able to see here. See the threads? The threads are not tapped all the way through. And by doing that, by not having the threads tapped all the way through, what that does is it makes a stop. So I'm going to take my screw and see, this is the side that the Allen wrench goes through. Start it and take your Allen wrench through the other side, get it in there, and then you're going to spin it backwards, and that will draw it down into there until you bottom it out where the threads stop. Now we've got a couple things happening here. Now we tighten it in. Now that's holding it and protecting the threads. That allowed me to drill it. I was able to clamp onto this. My threads are protected. Next, whenever I go in and I weld this aluminum is a big old heat sink, so it will protect the threads from stretching and warping. And we'll put that in there and we're going to weld it. Well, son of a bitch. My tungsten broke. Well, I forgot to hit record. Sorry, guys. I'll show you real quick what I did. I took this Allen wrench underneath here, and as I held the TIG torch here, I spun it. Now I changed to a smaller cup so I could get it in there a little better. But yeah, that's what I did. So should work just fine. Touch up a little spot here. There you go. Of course, I've got to do some trimming, and I may have to build up that weld just a little bit, but that gives us the idea. And it's not a good idea to weld with a white shirt on. It'll burn you, because the reflection of that UV light can give you a sunburn and burn your eyes up. But something small like that, it's not a big deal. So what we'll do now, we're just going to check and just see how much we're going to have to remove off of here. Yeah, a whole lot. You can see down in there, you can see the tip of that pin, so we're going to have to take a lot off. we go. What I'm going to do here is where I drilled and tapped this in the receiver here, this LaFever, it's a little sloppy because the hole was kind of oblong where I was having to drill out the damaged tap and carbide drill bit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the thread repairing kit over here, thread repairing epoxy, and we're going to shore up those threads, make sure we get a good tight seal. And the first part of doing this is you want to make sure that you've got anything that you don't want, like, see, we're not using this for Loctite, so we want to make sure that our screw here is not going to have the epoxy adhere to it. That's the last thing we want. Because if the epoxy adheres to this, we won't get it back out. And what we want to use this for is for forming those threads. So we're going to set this off to the side here to let it dry. I've got it hanging on the end of that Allen key and it's just sitting off the side. That'll let it dry in the air. And then I'm going to take and down in there around where I have drilled that, I'm going to put some of our mold release stuff here and to make sure that we don't end up with a mess that we can't clean up. The brush won't reach. I'm going to have to take just grease it down a little bit with some oil, and that will take care of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some brake parts cleaner down there to clean out the inside of there where the threads are, because that's the part we want to stick to. And after I've done that, I'm going to take a little brush and put some oil all around everywhere I don't want it to stick. And that'll be just fine. You can use Vaseline, you can use any number of things. Now something that we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to make sure to go ahead and install the firing pin, at least have it in there, whenever we put our thread forming compound in to make the threads, just in case the release agent doesn't work. That way we'll already have our firing pin installed, because nothing would be worse to get that pin in and then not be able to get our firing pin installed and have to drill the damn thing out again. They take equal parts, and it's not so precise. It doesn't need so much precision that you weigh them, but if I was going to be doing a job to where it was no other choice but to do this was the only way I could fix these threads, and they had to hold, what I would do is I would actually take and I would weigh out with a gram scale the precise amount of each one, because they're supposed to be equal parts, and I would make sure that I had the precise amount in there. That's the only way to know for sure. Weight doesn't lie, Your eyes can lie to you, and if you try and use like some type of little measuring device or something, you can't. But the weight is definite. It's for sure. This is the little stick that they give you. And if anyone's wondering, this is a primer tray turned upside down. For any of you guys that reload, if you're not using these primer trays, if you're just throwing them away, man, that's a great resource that you're just letting go. Now what I'm going to be using to dab this in there is a bamboo stick. You can buy these at craft stores. See if I can get y'all a little bit closer look here. That should be enough there, because we're not trying to cake it in there. We just had a little bit of slop to take up. And now we have our screw that I've fashioned up, or our pin, and it's got release agent on it. I'm going to take it and install it. Before I go any further, I'm going to check. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray a little bit of just some CLP, some break free down in there. And that I'm doing to make sure that down there on the firing pin, nothing's going to stick to it. That way, if I've pushed some of our epoxy through, whenever it comes out here on the other side, it'll run into all that break free and not stick. There we go, and now we'll let it set up. I've backed it off just so it'll help form those threads. We're going to break this loose now. Alright, we're going to put it back together now. This is a tool that I've made specifically for doing this gun. It's just out of aluminum plate, and it's got a notch right there in it. This is the hammer, and that notch fits on the sear engagement point, and that's going to allow me to press that hammer and to press that spring. But in order to get it to stay in there when I'm putting it all together, I'm going to glue this to there. I'm going to use the 603 Loctite. It's the press fit. Basically, it's metal super glue is basically what it is. Well, probably help if I had a hole in the lid here. Just squeeze it in a little bit and let it dry. On this LaFever shotgun here, this is the tool that I fabbed up for putting the hammer back in. And you'll notice right there, there's a little notch, and that actually engages where the sear lockup point is. What we're going to do, we've got our spring in its plunger there. We're going to use the press, or we're going to attempt to use the press to get this down into place. Bring this down, let it touch. And now this is not exact science, my friends. I may have to make some changes to my tool, but what I've done is I used a retaining compound, basically the Loctite super glue, in order to super glue that hammer to the tool that I fabricated here. Have the hammer pressed back into place now. Got the pin in. I'll brown that to make it look good again. While I did not press this back in on camera, you wouldn't have been able to see anyways because I had my hands, my head in everywhere. The part that you've already seen of me doing it was the exact same process. Just took a little bit of time to finesse it in there just right with the tool that I made. So I'm going to clean this out just a little bit where the glue was, and then we'll put the rest of it back together. Sear. The sear goes right in here. Very, very simple. And what we'll do push that on through, make sure that we're lined up. Make sure that we move. Now our sear is in there. This is on the LaFever shotgun. This piece here, this J hook, is the latch for your latch when you have it in the open position. And so it'll go long side in there. There's actually a hole there. And then make sure that it gets pushed on down in there a little ways. And you're going to take this next spring here, and it goes down in on top of it, and then your base plate goes on. That hook there is going to hook on that cross shaft right there. You need to make sure that this part of your safety selector goes right in there on your safety switch, so to speak. And the tricky part is this side needs to go in first before that side. Alright. What I did was I got the screwdriver in there and twisted just a little bit to spread those two apart, and then I was able to push that down. It's not a good idea to use the screw itself to push that into its place. There we go. For doing our trigger guard, it's got a notch. You got to get it past that down there. So you're going to turn it, if you're holding it upside down, the right hand side here, work it down, there we go. I worked it down just back and forth until it went. We're going to spin it. When you get to here, you're going to have to raise it up and put it in its home. Go. Throw the buttstock on. A little bit of Loctite on the buttstock bolt. We're going to try to just drop it in and see if we get lucky. And I think we did. Get a light. Get it snugged up. There's that. Here's the LaFever shotgun, all finished up. It's got a fresh coat of frog lube on it. We'll let that soak in for a little while. But everything functions properly. Another nice gun finished up.